Do you also want your characters to look so incredible? In this video, we will show you these artists' general process and approach to creating these type of works. So, let's go! This video is not necessarily a step-by-step follow-along tutorial, but it will show you what process and steps these artists use and how you can use it for your own work. As an example of the whole painting process, we chose the artist Jana Schirmer, who in her work shows everything that we will discuss in today's video. Finding good references for your work is key. An artist who creates larger work should always take some time to find quality and useful references.
So once I have my rough idea, the next thing I do is look for references. And this is also something that I really didn't do too much in the past. I just started to pick that up more and more now, but you can improve your image so much if you use references.
One of the most important techniques is thumbnailing. They are used not only to design environment, but also for more complex scenes containing characters.
So the next stage is thumbnails, and I feel this is the most important step for the whole picture. Like, we really want to make sure that you get the best possible result in this picture, because it will define the whole image. You know, all the rendering, colors, details, all of that stuff is just cosmetical, but this is basically the essence of the whole image. So here you see how I combine the two thumbnails. I didn't really like the drawing of the girl in the thumbnail, even if I really liked the pic. The girl felt like too awkward. Her pose didn't really look very comfortable, so I combined the pose I liked with the shape of the pic. Gonna start the line art.
Once you have decided which thumbnail version to choose, it is time to line art cleanup. This part is very individual, and can vary greatly from artist to artist. Some leaves the lines very rough, some have them very clean.
So in this step, I just make sure I like the anatomy and that the line art isn't too thick, because that would really distract me from painting later. As you can see, I'm having a different layer for the pig and for her, and for her clothing, so that makes it really easy for me to move stuff around and erase things, because especially when I draw her design, I'm just roughly sketching in the idea, even if I'm not sure if I want to keep it that way. And this way it's almost like a dress-up doll in a way, because I can easily erase her clothing without totally destroying her anatomy. And it's important for me to figure out her anatomy first, because I feel it's super hard to make a drawing where you think about the design of her and the anatomy at the same time. So just draw your figures naked first, use your references, do whatever you can to make the anatomy feel right, and then you go on from there.
The next step is coloring. Many artists, creating in this style, use a method called from grayscale to color. This method is very useful in that you first lay out the basic values, and thus create a contrasting painting and at the same time a guide for the coloring process itself. At the same time, you will also arrange the location of the light and its interaction with the character.
So in this step, I purely want to figure out the values of the image, and I will later use this as a reference. So in this step, I really only concentrate on values, and I don't think about colors too much. It's just about the values. And like I said, I like the idea of having the pic dark and having brighter background and a brighter character. And I like to use the lasso tool a lot to mask different areas that I can fill out with an airbrush, so I have this hard edge against a soft edge, and that's pretty much all the detail I'm gonna use in this stage. I don't have to go further than that. And this step is also great if you wanna show to clients. Like when I do client work, this is usually the stage I'm gonna send my sketch in. So the client already has a better idea how the image could look like, you know, because a sketch itself, just a line art, it's kind of hard to imagine.
Once you are satisfied enough with your value thumbnail, now it's time for the coloring process. In the following section, we will show you the professional procedure for adjusting the colors and then the light. Specifically, this artist, at first only goes for base colors, so far without shadow and light. This method is handy because the artist does not have to deal with the lights but only the color palette and the mood of the painting.
Gives the whole image a little bit more depth. In the next step, I color the outlines in because I don't like to work with black outlines. Sometimes when I wanna pick up a color that is touching the outlines, I will pick up the gray too, you know what I mean? Like, I would rather have a orange color, so in case I will mix the color with the outline, it doesn't become grayish. And then I only concentrate on local colors. Like I said so often, I like to tackle each problem by its own. So in this step, I only concentrate on local colors, and that's also how the references come in handy. I really like how the pick has different local colors because the fur is gonna be a little bit different, and that's what I try to address. The same thing I do with the character as well. I just try to find a good local color for her skin, for her hair, and so on. And yeah, actually, I get asked a lot about why I use RGB sliders, and quite frankly, it's because I'm so used to it. When I started drawing digital about 16 years ago, I was using a Java-based online drawing program that was called Oekaki. I'm not sure how many people of you remember that, but basically you had RGB sliders, and that's how I got so used to them, and I still love them till today. I want to keep the background not too distracting. I would like to have most colors on her to keep the focus on her, because I feel it's really easy sometimes that you put too much color on the background and then it becomes totally distracting, and it's better to have some really soft changes in color. And I really like to use that very rough painterly almost brush to simulate the leaves, but they're gonna be not that visible. It's just about the shape at this point.
Now we'll follow the part that is probably the most diverse, and it is lighting. Lighting in painting mainly acts as a tool for storytelling. Once you have the base colors in the painting, you can determine with the light how you want the painting to affect the viewer. Therefore, it is quite useful if you do before the process itself the color key, where you indicate various situations of light, what the final painting might look like.
So this is my simplified version of the picture I have. What I want to do first is I select this layer with the characters on it, and you can select multiple layers. You just have to press shift at the same time, and then you will be able to select multiple layers. Fill this in with a solid color, and then I set this on multiply, and this is basically my shadow layer. So this layer will affect all of the local colors underneath. I like to use a soft brush for this, and if you use add, it's pretty good if you use a dark saturated color, because otherwise it will just be too bright. And then you can have this type of light, the direct sunlight and any additional light that you want to have, plus the more softer shadows. So I hope this little demo is gonna make more sense to you if you see the further progress of this image. The shadow layer is already added in multiply, like I did the selection, like I did in the small picture, and filled it with like a grayish color, and I add the skylight linear dodge add layer. If you're wondering how to get a good feeling about what colors work, once you have this selection of just painting all planes that are facing up, you can also change the colors and try around and see what's feeling best. That's what I like about having different layers in the beginning. Like you have a layer for the shadow, for the light, etc. That gives you so much possibility to change stuff, and you don't have to commit to one specific color, and you will always be able to change it. I feel with the texture it got a lot more color variation, which I like. Ah yeah, and the transform tool is nice to also have some kind of direction, since the tree isn't flat, and if I would just put the texture, and here you're going to see that I used the same blue that I used for the characters, that I also use it for the tree. It's very important that if you use a specific color for light, that you will use it for all of the elements in your picture, so it makes it more like belonging to the same scene. I was treating the whole scene as if the characters in the tree were in the shades, right? And now I'm adding a layer with add the linear dodge layer mode to add light to the scene. And sometimes it's even better to leave some things in the shade. Like I don't like it too much if the characters are fully in the sun. I think sometimes it's more interesting to leave out things in the shade. And you will see me changing the light here and there during the process, but since I did the value sketch, I have a clear idea. Also, I add some bounce light coming from the grass to the pig. I think that's always pretty fun.
And we are at the last part, where we will deal with rendering. This process is perceived differently by many artists, as in the previous part. In this step, artists mainly focus on polishing the work, the details, adding textures, making adjustments, etc.
I would like to talk a bit about photo bashing and why and how I use it, but first I want to show you one of the websites that I really like to use. It's called textures.com, and they have a lot of useful textures and photos that you can use. Also, when you use photos, you should be able to match it. Like it shouldn't stick out of your painting too much, because it's the best looking part of your painting. You know, you use different layer modes. Just make sure that everything kind of fits together. In the far background, I bashed some photos in, and I wanted to comment on this because I only used the selection of the photos to create another layer for the background. So I don't even use the shapes within the texture, just the selection itself. This is the 4th chapter, and this is gonna be all about rendering, and I hope I will find enough things to say, because with rendering it's a lot time consuming, but there's not too much to say compared to the other chapters. At this stage I like to have everything on one layer. You can see this happens at the very late stage of the whole painting progress. It's because it's much easier for me to continue rendering if I'm 100% sure that this is the light situation that I want. That's why I want to give me that time. Usually when I start rendering, I'm most excited about drawing and painting the characters, of course, right? It's for me, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree, drawing humans or characters is the most fun. People always have been drawing beautiful beautiful faces and beautiful humans, so it's something I don't really get bored of. I think with rendering, a big problem can be to focus too much on small details instead of the big picture. So this technique helped me to avoid that, since it doesn't make too much sense to go too much into detail before the layers are dropped. I only start really rendering when I figured everything out. Focus most on getting the folds right when I draw fabric, and again it can be a really good way to study folds if you do studies from life. Like all you need is just some kind of fabric that you lay on a chair or whatever. So I think seeing the folds in 3D is always has much more impact than drawing folds from photos. When it comes to hair, I really like to use the lasso tool again to make selections and then fill them in with a darker or brighter color. With hair, it's really easy to get distracted and try to draw every single hair. And sometimes I also like to use the liquify tool or copy things around to see if it's gonna be any better. Also, I think I should have done some better reference for the hands, but I thought at least redrawing them would help. So that's what I'm doing here. Put a white layer on top of everything and with a low opacity, so you don't get too distracted by the forms that you already have. I also added some freckles with a brush on her to give the skin a little bit more interesting parts and texture, I guess. But yeah, that's it for my narration, and see you in the next video.
We are now at the very end of this video, so let's summarize what we have shown you here. These artists emphasize not only realism, but also the story behind each of their paintings, which uses light and color to better tell what is happening in there. You also learned here that the basis of the whole painting is a black and white thumbnail, that helps to find you the rough composition and lighting which you'll use later in rendering process. If you need to repeat some parts, jump to them using the timestamps that are created here. We hope that we have shown you the process of artists, that creating for a 3A titles and that you will use it for your own work.